Care.
Welcome back. Still to come, Hollywood star Matthew Fox is here to tell us how he got lost and ended up in the West End.
That's lucky. First, last year we asked you to reveal just what you get up to between the sheets, and you certainly let us know. We thought we'd do it again this year, so let's talk about sex.
I'm bringing sexy back. Yeah. The mother boys don't know how to act.
Have sex under the covers.
Do you not feel like there's something missing? Really grip.
You're constantly knackered.
Yeah. It's got 3 thruster speeds.
Glad you've still got your tights on. There's only so far we're allowed to go.
Yeah.
You'll get a bit giggly and giddy.
This year, we decided to ask you again what happens in the bedroom, and the results are even more shocking. 64% of women have faked an orgasm. 42% of you are unhappy with your sex life. 68% of women have used sex toys. 52% of you have been cheated on. 38% of you have had cyber sex. It's time to talk about sex.
Sex therapist Jo Hemmings is here along with GP Dr Pixie McKenna, and thank you both very much for coming in.
Good morning.
So looking at the results of our survey here, you say that's pretty much what you would expect it to be.
Yes, pretty much, absolutely.
We were attracted by one of the statistics that 20% of men have faked an orgasm.
Yes, I think people don't understand that men can also fake orgasms. It's when they don't ejaculate. Sometimes they find it difficult, and sometimes they don't need to. And I think it's quite hard for women, particularly, to understand that that can be the case.
So
and
they
still
can have an orgasm without ejaculation?
Yes, but they can also, they simply don't orgasm, or they don't ejaculate, they don't climax. But they can have reasonably good sex, so that 20% doesn't surprise me. But it's a very unusual thing.
What you say is to look at the positives when you,
yes.
Because those who appear not to be having a good sex life, there is a greater percentage who are.
Indeed, I mean 42% are unhappy with their sex lives. But then 58% are happy, which is a very encouraging and positive figure. So I quite like looking at it like that, simply because we tend to look at the sort of doom and gloom and the sort of unhappy side, and actually the flip side is that it's pretty good for quite a lot of people.
Is that your opinion as well?
I think so, and I mean, as you say, that means over half of us are getting it right.
Yep.
Do you find it quite sad, though, that 64% of women are faking orgasms? Do you think that's because they can't tell their partner, look, you're not satisfying, you're not doing it properly, they can't talk about it?
I think people...
Because there's so much information now about how women can be helped.
And I suppose a lot of women are, you know, judging themselves on the yardstick of what they see on the internet, and they think they need to be the best at everything and, you know, super mum, super everything. And they aren't, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, aren't talking to their partners about the nitty-gritty.
No, and I think, you know, 64% of women have faked an orgasm at some time. Actually, I think this figure's quite low. I think 64% of women are admitting that. I think, you know, we do it sometimes to please our man, to get it over and done with.
We didn't ask them why.
Well, actually, sometimes you can have great sex without an orgasm. I'm somebody who believes you can have very good, very intimate, very enjoyable sex. You don't have to have an orgasm. And with some women, you know, that orgasm, they can only do it for themselves, with a toy or with their hands. And they live like that, you know, and that's fine. So, but I do think we fake it in order to make our man feel like they haven't disappointed us.
Well, there's an area of the survey that we didn't do last year because it's still a relatively new thing, and that is the fact that 64% of women think that cyber sex counts as infidelity. 53% of women have had sexual activity via text, phone, email with their partner. 34% of men have had it with someone other than their partner. 25% of men use porn most days. So all of this available sexual stimulation outside of your relationship.
Yes, I mean, the whole cyber sex thing and our definitions of infidelity. So do you think you have been cheated on if your partner is having cyber sex, text sex? I mean, it's a question you wouldn't have asked 10 years ago, but it's very much in the press because we're seeing celebrities behaving like this. And yes, people are considering it to be a betrayal, they are considering it to be infidelity.
And do you find that, as a sex therapist, people are talking to you about that? And that
They are.
feel
They're very
cheated?
confused by it. They don't sort of understand whether it's more forgivable than the actual physical betrayal with somebody else. And to a degree it is, actually, in my view. And again, people might think, you know, kissing somebody else is being unfaithful. I mean, it depends on people's own views, but obviously there are certain, the major infidelities of actually having an affair with somebody else, I think, are much greater than cyber infidelities, but it's certainly a growing...
And talking of
percentage.
infidelity, 52% say they had been cheated on, and the majority of our respondents in the survey were women. 9 out of 10 are women. So that is high.
I think at some point in our lives, we've all been cheated on. Don't you think?
Oh,
I mean, if it's,
well,
if it's
I'm
a
sorry,
gene-
Pixie, have you?
You must come and
Bit
see me,
heartfelt
Pixie.
there,
I'll talk to you about it.
It's, you know, if you're going over your whole life and your whole experience, I certainly have.
But most of them are in
cheated
I mean,
on?
most of the people who took part are in relationships.
I think it's quite high, but again, if you take the cyber sex, tech sex thing into account, then that might account for the 52%, because if, you know, that would just about stack up. I think it would be lower if it's a truly unfaithful betrayal, physical affair relationship. I think that would be lower.
We're going to
than
take
that.
calls a little bit later. I just want to touch on something here that I think it does affect a lot of people, a lot of women. 42% of women's desire for sex has decreased since having children. 24% of women say that they have a higher sex drive than their partner. 25% of women have used role play to enhance their sex life. So obviously there are some people who will bring in other things to spice up their sex life, but having children, getting older, losing the figure that you did have, or it changing because you're getting older,
And the menopause, we've had a lot of...
does have a massive input in the bedroom.
Huge input. And, you know, we were talking about this earlier. You have a baby, actually, you are exhausted. That's number one thing. You want to go into bed and you want to go to sleep. The last thing you want is some man pestering you. You lose about 700 hours in a partnership over a year when a baby's born, 700 hours of sleep. So, you know, you really do need to catch
There
up with
isn't
it.
that much time, let
No.
alone the energy to have it either. So,
And so what do you say to your partner then? If you're a woman and you've just had a baby, you've got a young family and there isn't time in the day, how do you make that work?
I think you have to be opportunistic, actually. I've always believed that. Either you've got to make yourself a night, a date night, where you get someone to look after the baby and you go out, or the baby goes and stays somewhere, perhaps with the grandparents if possible, or baby's asleep. And you go for it, and you take your
When
moment.
the baby's
you don't
asleep,
wait
when the
till you go
baby's
to-
asleep, you often want to be
want
asleep.
I
That's the
agree.
problem, I
but
think.
the trouble is, there's got to be a little bit of compromise there somewhere.
We'll talk more later on when we take some calls and some emails. Thank you both very much indeed, just for the moment. As I said, Joe and Pixie will be here in a bit answering your questions and calls, and there is still time to email us this morning at itv.com.
Now, competition for you. How would